In the middle of one of Australia's rivers, after an outbreak of crazed zombies, Andy sails his houseboat alongside his wife Kay, who looks after their daughter Rosie while he pilots the boat. During his journey, the driver comes across a balloon floating around the site, and as he looks towards the edge of the lake, he comes across two children running after the object, and becomes extremely worried. However, before he could talk to the youngsters, they ran off to meet their families. Noticing Andy's presence, the man draws his gun and intimidates him, making him leave before he is shot by the campers. Later, the survivor finds several medical kits scattered in the water and retrieves them with his net so that they can accumulate more and more resources. Soon after, the couple try to find new places to scavenge, as they only have about 4 meals left. Kay tells them that they can explore one of the towns in the area again, and suggests that they set off towards the shore to look for more supplies. The problem is that Andy is still too scared to go anywhere near dry land, and says that for the time being, they should stay in the lake for as long as possible. Upon hearing this, Kay gets angry and reveals that if they don't find food in the area, Rosie could lose her life in a few days. The next day, the survivor sets sail in search of more supplies, when he comes across a wrecked yacht. With that, Andy approaches with his rowboat, and after ensuring that there is no crew member, he decides to investigate the vessel. Inside, the man finds several compartments full of food, and begins to collect as many resources as possible. Just then, something moves inside the ship's bathroom, making Andy decide to leave before he is attacked. On the houseboat, the couple celebrate finding supplies, and Kay asks her husband to spend some time with their daughter, as he hasn't spoken to the girl in a while. While Andy falls asleep in the bedroom next to Rosie, the woman decides to investigate the yacht on her own so that she can find toiletries for her husband. After finding what she was looking for, Kay realizes that something is moving inside the ship, but before she can escape, she ends up being grabbed by the creature. Sometime later, Andy finally wakes up, and noticing the tracks scattered across the floor, he becomes worried and desperately searches for his wife. When he comes across the woman, the survivor realizes that she is seriously injured, and after removing his daughter from the room, he tries to stop Kay's wound, which starts a 48-hour timer on his watch. Realizing what is happening, the woman begins to despair, but Andy calms her down and says that as long as they take care of the infection, everything will be fine. With the injuries under control, the man tells her that they need to find medical help as soon as possible, but Kay refuses, saying that they could put Rosie in danger if they decide to leave their houseboat. Annoyed, Andy explains that if his wife really is infected, they can slow down the symptoms with the help of medicinal products, but they need to act fast. So the survivors row their boat to dry land and start looking for a new shelter as they cross the desolate lands of the region, which have many traces of the destruction caused by the zombies. After a few minutes of exploration, the couple come across a partially preserved vehicle and decide to use it as their transportation. While her husband fills up the new car with his gallon of gas, Kay takes care of Rosie in the back seat, but at that moment, the woman notices that a zombie is approaching them, and uses the headlights to warn Andy quickly. The man rushes inside the vehicle, allowing the survivors to escape without being caught by the creature. During the trip, Kay notices that Rosie isn't feeling well and asks Andy to park so they can change the baby's diapers. Taking advantage of the stop, the survivor begins to analyze the map of the region so that he can find the nearest shelter. The problem is that the woman's infection is getting worse and worse, so she ends up having a seizure and falls to the ground, being rescued by Andy. When she wakes up, Kay feels nauseous, and noticing that her wounds are creating a kind of yellow goo, she becomes extremely desperate and orders the man to stop the car. After parking, the woman tries to run away, but Andy stops her, saying that they still have enough time to get to a hospital and control the infection. However, the woman refuses to stay by his side and says she doesn't want to put her family in danger. Despite this, Andy says he won't let Kay give up, and after taking her back to the vehicle, they continue their journey. Concerned for his wife's well-being, the survivor ends up getting distracted, and when he looks ahead, he comes across a person standing in the middle of the road. Thanks to this, he tries to swerve his car, but the vehicle ends up losing control and crashing into one of the trees in the area. In one of the trees, Fumi, an Aboriginal girl who lives around the area, sees the situation and calls out to prevent the zombie from walking towards the couple. After making sure that Rosie is all right, Andy begins to clear away Kay's debris, but at that moment he realizes that a huge tree branch has hit the woman's body, which is trapped in her seat. Witnessing this terrifying scene, the man begins to feel ill and loses consciousness. A few minutes later, Andy wakes up, and when he looks at Kay, he realizes that his wife has just lost her life, and before she lost control, she covered her face with the bizarre goo so that she couldn't hurt her family. Realizing that the woman has left a last message asking him to take care of Rosie, the survivor is devastated and gets his daughter safely out of the vehicle. Soon afterwards, Andy decides to eliminate Kay, so that the woman can finally rest in peace, but after finishing her off, he realizes that she had used the compound to prevent the total transformation, putting an end to everything. At the same time, Andy notices that he has been bitten by his wife, and after setting the transformation timer once again, he decides to start his journey in search of a safe place for Rosie. While trying to calm his daughter down with Kay's perfume, Andy comes across the man he had seen earlier and scolds him for everything that has happened to his family. What he didn't know was that it was actually a zombie, and upon noticing the grotesque appearance of the monster, the survivor grabs one of the branches on the ground to defend himself. Just then, Thumi emerges from the bushes and orders the man not to attack her father. In order to attract the creature's attention, the young woman uses a wound on her hand and the smell of her blood to attract the zombie. Confused, Andy tries to understand what the girl is doing, but when he notices that Thumi has run away, he decides to continue his journey. A few hours into the journey, the survivor comes across an abandoned area that has been partially destroyed by the zombie attack. Looking for medicinal items to treat his wounds, Andy walks to a small school, and after rummaging through some rooms, he is met by Etta. Noticing the watch on his wrist, the woman realizes that the man is infected and begins to put some bandages on his arm to stop the bleeding from continuing. During the night, Andy observes the woman next to her daughter, but at that moment, he discovers that Etta has been wearing a wig all this time. Soon afterwards, the man decides to go outside for a breath of fresh air, when he comes across several aborigines performing some kind of ritual in the middle of the bushes. On the other side, Thumi observes the movement of people, who call her name repeatedly, asking her to go home, but she decides to ignore them and returns to her hiding place. In the bathroom of the abandoned school, Andy begins to feel strange, and before he can call for help, he ends up having a seizure due to his infection, causing him to lose consciousness. In the morning, the survivor wakes up on the ground and realizes that he has about 32 hours before he is completely transformed. With that, he goes outside, where Etta tells him that her friend must go to the Thumi tribe, as they will have a safe place for Rosie to live in peace. Ready, Andy continues his journey, walking through the vast Australian desert while carrying his daughter on his back. A few hours later, the survivor arrives at a small destroyed military base, and takes advantage of the stop to give Rosie some water. In addition, Andy realizes that several zombies have their heads stuck in the ground, and decides to leave before he is found by the creatures. Soon afterwards, the man finds an abandoned truck and tries to approach it so that he can use the vehicle, but at that moment he is intercepted by Vic, who orders him to move away. At the same time, the man fires in Andy's direction, hitting the head of a zombie that was about to attack him. Desperate, Vic says that his leg is trapped in the rubble around him, and that he needs to get out of there as soon as possible because more monsters are approaching from the mountains. The man also explains that there are no longer any military bases in operation, and says that he is a member of a survivor's shelter in the region. So he decides to throw his keys to Andy, who uses the winch to free the survivor, allowing the pair to escape without being attacked. Now that they are safe, Vic takes his new companion to the shelter and introduces Lorraine, his wife. Soon, the man hands the woman a gift and asks her to look after Andy and Rosie while he carries out maintenance work on the site. Before setting off in search of more supplies, Vic asks the survivor to accompany him and says that Lorraine will be able to look after his daughter while they are away. Andy hands Rosie over to the woman and sets off in search of resources with his teammate. Later, Vic takes his new friend to a place full of zombies, who are trying to attack a caged target in the bushes. Taking advantage of the monster's distraction, the man begins to pass on his shooting skills to Andy, making the pair use the creatures as targets for their training. With all the zombies eliminated, Vic walks over to the cage and begins to collect supplies from each of the bodies, but at that moment, Andy realizes that Thumi is trapped in the cage and is terrified. The hunter explains that when the world functions normally again, he will be able to become extremely rich, as he has large stocks of shiny utensils, energy and gas. Realizing that his partner doesn't want to believe him, Vic says that his only concern should be Rosie, and that they should use the remains of civilization to their advantage. At the shelter, Lorraine takes care of Andy's daughter as normal, but when she's cuddling the baby, she notices that Rosie has yellowish goo on her body, and she gets extremely scared. Before returning home, Vic sets another trap around the area, using the remains of the zombies in a cage, where he has imprisoned Daku, an elderly member of Thumi's tribe. The man scolds his prisoner for invading his wells, and as punishment, he decides to turn on a radio with extremely loud music, so that various creatures are attracted to his target. Far away, the members of the Aboriginal tribe continue their search for Thumi and Daku, using their skills with fire to eliminate all the zombies in the area and clean up the desert. As night falls, the survivors sleep in their shelter next to Andy, but when he notices that it is about to collapse once again, the man gets scared and worries for Rosie's safety. So he decides to go outside, and after saying goodbye to his daughter, he prepares to apply the compound that will end his life and prevent the transformation. At this point, Andy is stopped by Lorraine, who says that they still have enough time to find a new shelter and save Rosie's life. Devastated, the survivor says he has no hope of success in his mission and asks the woman to protect his daughter alongside her husband. However, Lorraine claims that Vic is not who he says he is. In fact, he was responsible for eliminating her real husband, along with dozens of other employees from his factory, who were locked up so that he could survive. Realizing that they are trapped with a complete lunatic, Andy says that he has found a family living by the lake and tells her that they can try to reach them. The problem is that Vic has overheard the entire conversation, and before he can react, the man is struck in the face, causing him to lose consciousness. Soon after, Andy wakes up next to Thumi and realizes that he has been caged with the girl. Desperate, the survivor tries to talk to the young woman, and after apologizing for shouting at her the day before, he asks for her help, promising that they will free the old man who has been imprisoned by Vic. The pair realize that several zombies are approaching, and on noticing the baits scattered around the cage, Andy sets up a kind of hook, allowing him to throw them towards the monsters. Thanks to the distraction, the creatures begin to devour the end of the rope, which is pulled tighter and tighter, causing the cage door to open and the pair to escape safely. Soon after, they arrive at Vic's camp, and after climbing into one of the containers, they manage to find Lorraine. Andy quickly rescues the woman and daughter from the scene, and after collecting the keys to Daku's cage, they run towards the truck. The problem is that Vic suddenly wakes up, and during the escape, he prepares to shoot the man, who runs desperately. At the last second, Lorraine runs to try to stop the man, but he insists on trying to hit his target, causing the woman to be hit. Realizing that his friend has sacrificed herself for his safety, Andy flees alongside Thumi and Rosie, and noticing that he has just hit his companion, Vic is extremely stunned. When they reach Daku's cage, the survivors realize that the old man has already escaped and decide to continue their escape. So that they can protect themselves, Thumi takes the man to his secret cave, but at that moment, Vic appears with his truck and orders them to come out immediately. The man says that if his enemy doesn't reveal where he is, he will eliminate them one by one, but Andy is undeterred and remains silent while he tries to calm Rosie down. Believing that his targets are not in that area, the man leaves, allowing the survivors to spend the night in their hideout. While they were resting, Thumi realized that Andy had woken up in the middle of the night and had started to consume the blood on the walls of the cave, but after a few seconds, he managed to regain consciousness. The next day, the pair continue their journey with Rosie, but halfway there, the girl says she needs to check something and runs off. Worried, Andy decided to go after Thumi, who found her father Willie's jacket hanging from one of the trees, where one of her relatives had placed the man's body. Feeling bad about everything her father may have been through while she was away, the girl starts to hit herself on the head with a rock, only to be stopped by Andy, who tries to calm her down. The man says that Thumi did everything she could to protect Willie, but that was no longer her father, but a monster who could attack her at any moment. Despite this, the girl doesn't listen to her friend and says she prefers to remain by her father's side. Saddened, Andy tells Rosie that he would be happy for Thumi to continue traveling with them, but the young woman refuses, saying that she doesn't care about either of them. Devastated by what he's hearing, the survivor says he knows the girl is lying and leaves. A few minutes later, Andy starts to feel sick, and after realizing that he only has 9 hours until his transformation is complete, he despairs, causing him to start collapsing once again. In her father's tree, Thumi begins to hear Rosie's screams and decides to check on the survivor to find out what's going on. Soon afterwards, Andy manages to return to consciousness, and is relieved to see that the girl managed to protect his daughter while he was down. Thumi says she knows the way to the lake and asks her friend to accompany her. A few minutes later, they find the rowing boat that Andy had positioned a few days ago, and start sailing towards the campers. When they arrive at the scene, the survivors realize that the family is no longer there, and after walking for a few more meters, they come across an abandoned trailer where a birthday party was taking place. Taking advantage of the fact that they are safe, Andy starts looking after Rosie, while Thumi feeds herself with the pieces of cake left by the former owners. A few hours later, the girl rests inside the trailer, while the survivor begins to search for his family, who are found just outside the camp. When he notices Andy's presence, the man approaches him and says that he can have his trailer and truck if he can get them working again. Confused, Andy tells them that he doesn't have to flee that place alone, and asks his family to accompany him on his journey in search of a safe haven. However, the man reveals that this will not be possible, and asks that if the survivor leaves with his car, Andy should take his revolver with him, since after doing what he needs to there will still be 2 rounds of ammunition left. Devastated by what he's hearing, Andy decides to leave, but halfway there, he hears gunshots, indicating that the whole family has been turned into zombies. Far away, Andy tries to calm down after everything he has just witnessed, but his fear goes away when he realizes that Rosie has managed to say her first words, calling him daddy. After reuniting, Thumi uses her special paint on the baby and explains that it is a substance that prevents the zombies from detecting her presence. Soon afterwards, the pair reach a railway bridge and pass over it in silence so as not to be seen by the horde of monsters devouring the body of a large animal. With that, the survivors reach a tunnel, and during the crossing, Andy comes across several zombies in a state of hibernation, and Thumi says that they can pass through them, as they are completely camouflaged. As they near the exit, the trio come across Vic, who is searching the place alone. They quickly run to hide from the man, but Rosie ends up attracting his attention, causing the man to start looking for his targets. In order to defeat the criminal, Andy asks Thumi to get into the truck with his daughter, and runs up to the group of sleeping zombies, shouting for Vic to try and capture him. So the man eliminates each of the creatures, but before he can hit his enemy, Andy grabs him and shoots him in the stomach. Immediately afterwards, the two of them push each other against the walls of the place, and noticing that Vic is trying to retrieve the revolver, Andy runs towards his adversary. However, the man ends up being faster and shoots Andy in the stomach, who lies paralyzed on the ground. Angry at his human bait, Vic rushes to the truck, and after hitting Thumi several times, he throws her away. Desperate, Andy walks to the vehicle, and noticing that the girl is fine, he tries to rescue Rosie. Arriving at the truck, the man sees Vic holding his daughter, and realizes that his adversary was unable to hurt the baby. Taking advantage of the situation, he manages to get Rosie back and leaves the place with Thumi, while the man ends up succumbing to his madness. During the escape, Andy notices that his friend is feeling weak, having been badly hurt by Vic, but he begs her to stay on her feet and teach her a few words of his native language. The problem is that the infection is becoming more and more aggressive, and when he realizes that he is about to collapse, the survivor asks Thumi to look after Rosie, and rushes off. Meanwhile, the members of the Aboriginal tribe roam the desert forest in search of zombies, using their camouflage paints and indigenous weapons to eliminate the monsters. Quickly, large amounts of yellow goo begin to appear around Andy's face, but he observes his friend distracting her daughter, and when he comes across the animal remains on the ground, he has an idea. Together, the survivors walk through the groups of zombies, and thanks to his infection, the man is not noticed by the creatures, but a few meters ahead, he realizes that he can no longer withstand the transformation. With his last strength, Andy prepares a stick with human bait and asks Thumi to look after his daughter for him. Soon afterwards, the infected man dug a hole in front of him, and after putting on the backpack carrying Rosie, he leaned over, allowing the girl to climb on his back. In the center of the forest fire, the members of the tribe continue to fight bravely against all the zombies that appear, and when they notice that they have eliminated all the creatures around them, they begin to leave. Just then, the group begins to hear whistling in the distance, and when they look back, they see Andy transformed into a zombie, and realize that Thumi and Rosie are being carried on his back. Overcome with emotion, the girl takes the baby from her zombie father and runs to hug her mother, while the rest of the tribe prepares to finish off the last remaining monster. Before his friend is eliminated, Thumi splashes Kay's perfume on Andy, who gets one last reminder of his wife before losing his life once and for all. Finally, the Aboriginal tribe walks back to their village, where they are welcomed by many people who are extremely happy to see them. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.